Hi, everybody. We're going to get started. Thank you all for coming tonight. This is a terrific opportunity to have a drawing architecture studio here for more than a year. I'm not going to make any introductions, but just to say that we'll do the lecture up here, and then we will go downstairs after for questions and a reception. I'm only going to introduce Professor Fei Wang, who's going to make a more formal introduction, and leave it at that. And thank you all for coming, and look forward to the lecture.
Hello, my name is Fei Wang, and I'm faculty member in Syracuse Architecture, and welcome to the Einhorn Lecture Spring 2023. I'm honored to introduce my friends and colleagues, Li Han and Hu Yan. But before that, please allow me to acknowledge with the respect of the Onondaga Nation and firekeepers of Haudenosaunee and the indigenous people of those whose ancestral lands Syracuse University now stands. Drawing Architecture Studio established by Li Han and Hu Yan in 2013. It's 10 years. And DAS and explores the possibilities of drawing, space, and urban studies in a very unique way. They use engineering drawing software as a tool to derive inspiration from architecture, art, popular culture, and daily life to create magnificent and complex images of urban landscape. At the same time, they consider infinite vector images as building materials, explore the multiple paths to bringing virtual images back to the material world, and break the boundary between image and space. DAS understands urban studies as experience and narrative with open forms, and conduct experiments through various media such as architecture models, art installations, comics, and books. DAS has expanded worldwide in many kind of major exhibitions, including the 4th Chicago Architecture Biennale, the Chinese and Japanese pavilions of the 16th Venice Architecture Biennale, and 7th and 8th Shenzhen, Hong Kong Bi-City Biennale of Urbanism and Architecture, and many others. Their works have been acquired by MoMA in New York, San Francisco MoMA, and Art Institute of Chicago, and White Rabbit Gallery in Sydney, and Macau Museum of Art in China, and Pingshan Art Museum in Shenzhen, and Wing H Art Center in Beijing. And their publications include A Little Bit of Beijing, second book, A Little Bit Beijing Dashlar, and The Joy of Architecture Drawing, and Hutong Mushroom, and Apartment Blossom. And they have taught VC Studio in Beijing during the pandemic in spring 2021, and the studio work was fantastic. And 16 students, they work as one team to create one large drawing. And it was exhibited in many venues in Beijing, Shenzhen, and Shanghai, and also won many major drawing awards worldwide. And Li Han is a registered architect in China, and he received a B.Arch degree from Central Academy of Fine Arts in Beijing, and a Master of Architecture degree from RMIT University in Melbourne, Australia. And Hu Yan received the Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from Concordia University in Montreal, Canada. Without further ado, please welcome Drawing Architecture Studio, Li Han and Hu Yan.
Thank you so much to Dean Speaks and Professor Fei Wang for the kind introduction. And hi, I'm Hu Yan.
I'm Li Han.
Thank you very much for having us. It's a great honor to stand here. And it's actually a little bit pressure to us to give lectures at Syracuse University School of Architecture, because we have been talking about our work so much. And we worry that every time if we don't come up with something new, you will get bored of us very soon. So again, this time for the lecture, we try to find something deep from the bottom of our treasury box. And fortunately, we did find something new, but it's also something old. It's a drawing Li Han did in his childhood.
Let me introduce this important drawing, actually. Important to me because to some extent, it really predicted my future career. So I even wrote some captions of the on the drawing. The left part is the title of the drawing, American Street. So how could I draw American Street when I was a kid? So I remember maybe during that time, the family will hang a big calendar during the New Year, and one picture with 1 month, and this picture is always about famous superstar, animal, flower, and scenery. I guess maybe that year my family had a calendar with the theme of world famous city, so I was shocked by American cityscape. So I made this picture. And also there's some captions on the top. Masterpiece by Li Han at age 5. World famous drawing is really shameless. But that's not enough. I even added another information. Drew in the United States. Actually, this is my first time come to United States. So it literally took me 40 years to fulfill the former part of this caption. And I think if it take me another 40 years to realize the latter part of the caption, I will be really lucky and grateful.
When we prepared this lecture, we found that actually we tried to find an answer to a question Dean Speaks gave us about 2 years ago when we had this discussion about drawing. Dean Speaks asked that most of our contents in our drawing about architecture in very poor conditions, and sometimes even garbage. And he asked that, but at the same time in the drawing, final drawing, everything looks very beautiful. And he asked that, how do we look at this contradiction? We couldn't give a good answer at that time because we really didn't know. But we kept thinking about this question. 2 years later, now we think that finally, probably we have to say that there's no solution for us to solve this contradiction, because the way we make our drawings, we use computer, we pursue the perfection, the precision, everything has to be really precise in the line or in color. Yeah, so it's made us impossible to really get realistic about our subject.
Yeah, it really depends on, I think the medium is really important. And in the computer drawing world, it's really refuse any, imperfection, coarse quality, rough quality. So we have failed to get that real feeling in the real world. Yeah.
Yeah, but we think that there must be a way for us to go to that direction. So since last year, we did a lot of experiments with architecture model, which is another powerful tool for architects. And we found that with architecture models, we can be doing work in another style, in another way. We will be using a bigger brushes and use different kinds of material, play with the layers. And then they completely change our way of working.
Yeah, I think because model is a real thing, so you kind of can put this handmade feeling on that. So you can test with this rough quality, imperfection, yeah.
Yeah. So today we want to share with you some latest works about drawing and about model. But all of them, the subject is the same. It's about everyday life. It's about ordinary views we found in our surroundings. Because everyday life has always been a key subject for our practice. Yeah.
For us, I guess there is an important question is how to transform this everyday power, these ordinary views into architecture practice. And also for us, architecture practice doesn't exactly mean architectural design. To us,
or making buildings.
Making buildings. To us, there are various ways of practicing for architect, like art installation, publishing, drawing. So I think in that aspect, in these various practice, there is a lot of opportunity to transform daily power to architecture practice.
Yeah. The first project is called Suddenly This View. It is a project for an art exhibition called Hometown Spring. The concept of the exhibition is to invite architects and artists to create a piece in any form to portray their hometown, preferably like small cities or village. But for us, we both grew up in big cities like Beijing and Shanghai. We don't have that experience in small cities. So the curator suggested, why not you look at the suburb of Beijing, try to find something interesting. So we went to a place called Pinggu. It's in the north of Beijing suburb area. And the moment when we stepped into this area, we found that a feeling of deja vu. It really reminded us the cityscape of Beijing in 1990s. You don't have fancy architecture, and everything seems a little bit outdated. Everything's very slow, very peaceful. So, but we feel so close to it because it reminded us of our maybe childhood or the memories many years ago. So we think that how we can catch that feeling, this kind of deja vu or this kind of closeness.
Yeah, a little bit nostalgia feeling.
Yeah, very nostalgic. And so we look at the way that how artists work. When there's a very good tradition that artists will paint from life. In this way, they do it very quickly, just directly on the site, follow their intuition. And so we think that this is really a good point for us to take. Yeah.
And for me, actually, is painting in life. It's important to artists because it forces you to make quick decision, not think too much, and go in a very direct way. And as an architect, maybe we are familiar with analytical thinking, with a lot of conceptual thinking, but sometimes we neglect this direct doing something. And we feel maybe through models we can get this painting in life, this feeling back to architecture.
Yeah. So this is a model we decided to make for this subject. We deliberately made it very small. The scale is 1 to 100. You can see the comparison to a pen. And the reason why we do so, as Li Han mentioned, that we want to make every model very quickly, like just in 1 or 2 days. And that means that you are forced to do a lot of simplification for your subject. You can see the comparison to the reality that we need to find a way how to do the signage, how to treat the windows, and so everything is reduced to a certain degree, but still try to catch the feeling of the original building.
I think actually in this way we are kind of pursuing sort of passive creation, because when you copy something, it feels that there is no creativity in it. Actually, our game is not not think about creative, but just copy it directly. But because the scale issue, because the material issues, you have to make some change, and this change sometimes bring creation which really out of our expectation.
Yeah. And you can see the models are completely in a different style from our drawings. That we leave all this imperfection of the material of the handcraft, and but in another way that we do leave a lot of details in the model itself. So after we have those models, we start to think that what's the relation between the model and the image if we want to bring it back to the two-dimensional world. And we got idea from a lot of artist works. Some photographers, they use models as a subject for their artwork. For example, for American artist James Casebeer, he usually will make a diorama with small models and take the photo as if like landscape photography. And on the right is the German artist Thomas de Mont. He's famous for making one-to-one paper model and then make the photography and then destroy the model actually.
And I think to this artist, it's hard to say are they model maker or photographer. So they spend hundreds of hours on model making and only take them maybe 1 minute or maybe 10 seconds, 1 second to generate a photograph. So, but it kind of inspired us that by being a model maker, you are automatically being a photographer. So you can do these two things at the same time.
Yeah. So we decided to push our model into another medium, like photography. So what we did is we play with our models, try to find the very interesting thing out of them, and we use iPhone to do some test shooting. After we get the perfect composition, and then we do a professional shooting at the studio. We are very lucky that a good friend, he got a very expensive camera. And with this camera, we can get 100 million pixels for the image. So that means that we can make a very large scale photo, but with very high resolution.
And also there's some special, shooting techniques, that technology, advanced technology that it can, express
Stacking 100 images into one.
drawing. Because they can use 100 photos with different focus, and they express them into one image. So every details
It's sharp.
Yeah, it's very sharp.
Yeah. So when we look at the photo, we suddenly found the familiar satisfaction when we look at our own drawing, the details. But when we do the details, in drawing, everything you have to do by yourself, like you have to draw all the details. But in photography, with the technique, the detail comes from the process of making the model, and so come from the camera.
Sometimes it's trace of hand, sometimes a trace of
Blues,
materials. So you cannot really expect them. And sometimes even the detail, we find it only in photos because it really enlarges these details. So we are enjoying this process that you find some unexpected details.
Yeah. So this is the exhibition view at Pingshan Art Museum. Here we lay out all the small models in the front, and in the back, large photos to corresponding to each model. So the viewers will, when they look at the models, they feel like they are like miniature. You are like from a goddess point of view. But when they look at the picture, they will feel like they are drawn into the model.
And also for us, the interesting thing is that not only playing with different media, but also to see what is the same, consistency behind these different media. And by doing this, actually, we realize our, consistency behind different media. That is, obsessed with those details, but in drawing is plain detail, plain detail. Here is unexpected detail.
And this project is very much influenced by a project called Suddenly This Overview by the Swiss artist Fischli and Weiss. You can see we even steal the title of the project. In this project, the artist used unfired clay to make very quick sculptures for different subjects.
Yeah, they're even quicker. They make 10 models, I guess, one day.
Yeah. And so the subject is very broad. It can be anything. And what's interesting is that they give name to each piece. For example, this one, we see two people lying in bed. The title is Mr. and Mrs. Einstein shortly after conception of their son, the genius Albert. So suddenly you feel that it's a historical moment. And we really love this kind of humor they put in in their work.
And I realize that title actually is important to artwork, so it can be the main role in the whole project.
Yeah. So we did the same thing for the photos we made. For each photo, we have either a description about what this person is doing in the scene, or it could be a part of the dialogue that we imagine those grannies having at the corner of the street. And so by doing so, we think that we add a narrative to those still images, and the viewers can have the space to imagine the story behind it.
Yeah, sometimes it adds another layer to the photos and can bring more thinking, more memories about that.
Yeah. So in general, that for this project, it's an ongoing project. We plan to do more over the years. Probably we will do something for Syracuse later.
That's exactly what we are doing in our VC studio.
Yeah. So the point for this project is that we try to discuss the relation between reproduction and creativity. We want to answer the question whether like making a direct copy from reality, whether it is a design, which we think it is. And also, secondly, that when we have the models, that we have the photography, we realize that as mentioned earlier, that we believe that no matter what art form or visual form you take, you probably will stick to one single your own style or obsession, your own standard in the artwork. And also, especially at the end of the project, when we have this whole series from a model to photos and with the titles, we realized, we think that we catch that moment why we feel so close to those venues when the first time we saw them. So yeah, so the whole process is just to make us to believe that we can have emotion, our own feelings into models.
And also, I think by this process, actually, because when you see, when you choose the, the building you're going to make model, sometimes you don't realize what is really good about. So, but definitely there's something
Strikes you.
attractive to you.
Yeah.
So, by this process, making models, shooting photos, and give the title of each model, though finally you realize you can capture the the humor behind the scenes, maybe some ironic feeling behind the the daily buildings. So that's a way to make you clear about what you like.
Yeah, you finally find something extra out of these ordinary views. And the next project is a drawing project. It's called Still Life in the Windy City. We talked about it last time during the conversation about drawing, but that was more about drawing techniques. And here we would like to share with you how this project changed our, like the way we look at the city. This project is for the Chicago Architecture Biennale in 2021. The site or the theme of the Biennale is called The Available City. The curator gave us several sites in the suburb of Chicago. This is called, one of them is called Inglewood. And because the loss of population, there are a lot of vacant lots in the area. And so the briefing is to give some proposal that what we can do with these vacant lots. At that time, we couldn't go to Chicago, and so we can only do some research on Google Maps. And first, as an architect, for the first response you will have probably just to say, okay, we make more buildings for the vacant lots. But we saw that in this area, they don't need any more new buildings. They have good enough architecture there, and all the facilities are great. So we started thinking that what else we can put in. And then we can only do our research in Beijing. So we worked in the neighborhood, and we found that there's one thing is actually important to urban space. We will call them urban objects, like those tents or the furnitures or the cars even. So they are usually, many of them, they belong to family, personal belongings. But the people, they put that out on the street, try to find a corner for themselves.
Yeah, I think the situation in Beijing quite different from the suburb of Chicago, because the density is much higher and people don't have enough private space, so they tend to bring their private things out to occupy certain
Area for
public
their
space to
yeah.
Claim their occupation. But this behavior, sort of illegal, or it's hard to say it's good or bad. But on one hand, it definitely make the public space fully utilized and looks very active.
Yeah. So after we got here, we really see that big contrast. This is a photo we took last week at Pioneer Homes, very close to school. And it is also a government-built social housing project. And here we see, it seems very empty. And there you don't see any personal belongings outside the building. So it seems that here that there's a clear boundary between public and private space.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but since the Biennale is an academic and art event, we think we can go wild in our proposal. It doesn't have to be realistic. So we decided to bring these urban objects into the neighborhood of Inglewood. For example, we found this really wheel-shaped chair, and we think we can put in the vacant lot, and so make it into a recycle garden. Then people can put their furniture, their used home appliance, and even the fish tank. So the neighbors can gather here, have a wonderful afternoon chat. And then another important object for our life in Beijing is this kind of exercise equipment. You can see that they are in very basic shape, very simple design. And compared to this one, this is also a design for the Biennale by a professional architect. And it's for gathering, and people can also climb up and down and play with it. For sure, that's the design here is more professional and more fashionable. But later, when we do some further thinking or research, we found that the essential spirit of exercise equipment is not the design, but how you use it. We found a lot of footage on the internet that grandmas and grandpas, they use them in a so creative way.
Yeah, I think grandma, grandpa is really famous. They are really famous star in Chinese social media.
Yeah.
They are pretty creative, and they turn these access facilities into a spot of popular
Attraction.
attraction.
Yeah. Many people will go
Travelers'
and take
attraction, even attractive some foreign travelers.
Yeah. So we decided we don't need design new facilities, access facilities for Inglewood. We just invite the grandpa and grandma to the neighborhood. So here we copied the same Olympic level gymnastic posters, and also like all different kind of way to use this. And you can also, this guy, he can still play with his corky.
And actually, this is really the question is that because these facilities really in the conventional standard is not real good design. It's just
Very
some basic things, but it does give a lot of flexibility to users. So maybe to design the combination of the user and the facility is even more important than design the object itself. But there's also another question. Can you really design how people use facilities? That's really something hard to control.
Yeah.
So in the end, do we really need to design?
Yeah. So as we said, that the concept of the whole piece is about how urban object is important to the urban environment. So in the composition that we deliberately to stress this importance by putting all the objects for the foreground occupy the majority of the space, and then all the buildings are much smaller as a background. So in this way that we try to express our point that we think that objects, they are much more sustainable, flexible, and affordable. So probably they can play much more important role than buildings.
I think the form of the building also matches the concept that. Yeah.
Yeah. And besides the examples we found in real life, we also, because this is a piece for Chicago, for American culture, we also look into some local reference. This is the only architecture we have for the foreground. It is a community center. We designed this interior. But the design also comes from some familiar works probably by the American audience. We really love the paintings by Grant Wood. He is also from mid-central America, that is very close to Chicago. And so we used the composition of his painting for the first floor of our community center. And then for the second floor, we directly just copy his studio interior. We just love this architecture. To us, it's very American, and we think it goes perfect with our drawing. And in general, we take reference from his landscape painting for our landscape in this piece. And this is how it was presented at Graham Foundation at the Biennale. And we print out the whole piece as a traditional Chinese scroll, so people can see that on the table. In general, that what we want to express in this piece is that nothing is here is like we actually designed. There's nothing new. Everything is from either real life or from the other cultural reference. But what we did is only to edit, to make a collage, and try to make connection of different elements. And then in the end, you feel it is a new drawing.
Yeah. To us, actually, design the connection between different elements is also a type of design. So even in drawing, you try to do the collage and how to connect different elements into a whole. It's really kind of take us most of the time to think.
Yeah.
So by connecting these conventional elements, it can form a new whole.
Yeah. So after this Chicago project, we started to pay more attention to these kind of urban objects. The next project we developed is called City of Domestic Machine. It's also about these small things in the city instead of the buildings. And the starting point is this vehicle we found on the street during our walk in our neighborhood. It is small tricycle and lit with lighting on at night. And through the window, you can see it is a key copy shop. And everything is so well organized, and we are so amazed. And so we wonder who owns this small shop. And then several days later, we passed by again, and this time we saw the owner. And he is a man with disabilities. And you see that here he has another identical car. So you can tell the difference from the cover of the snow on the top. Obviously that this car never moved, but this one he just used to get here. So suddenly we really become really interested in this situation, that there's a paradox. So here, because this car is it's mobile, and so people will think that it will go anyway. So no authority will question him that why you have a shop here, because he can never afford a shop for his own, like in the city of Beijing, everything is so expensive. But so the wheels become sort of like camouflage or undercover for him. So here, the paradox is that being mobile means that you can stay here forever.
Yeah. So the ability to mobile actually make these elements unmovable.
Yeah.
That's a paradox we feel.
Yeah. So this kind of structure naturally will bring us to the concept of mobile architecture that we are so familiar with in the history of architecture. So many artists and architects, masters, that they had the great design for it. But the difference is here, when we talk about mobile architecture, we mostly talk about bring your life to somewhere else. Yeah. But here, what we want to focus on is that they don't move. The reason why they have the mobile capability is you don't have to move. You can have a space in this city. So we call those machines, vehicles, as domestic machine because they are a kind of machine, but also they're usually owned by families, especially low-income families. They turn those transportation tools into a tool for them to run business, to make a living in the city.
Yes, actually, this is bring another issue about these mobile vehicles. We used to talk about this mobile ability, but here, actually, they have another important function. Is that it gives you a private space in public space.
Yeah.
So actually, it provides this sort of relative low-income class kind of way to utilize an expensive city to get a corner in the very expensive street and doing some business. That's kind of a new issue in the mobile architecture, we think.
Yeah. So we, again, decided to use models to carry out this new topic. For the key shop, we made these two identical cars. But this is probably just a simple reproduction of the reality. Then we think that whether there's a way we can add something extra in it. Because we started finding so many interesting similar scenes in the neighborhood. And so we took the example of this food shop. This is a food shop we went to very often. And this van belonged to the owner. And here is the sidewalk between. So the owner uses the van to have the shipment, storage, or sometimes he directly sells fruits from out of the van. So for us, relationship between these three parts become very interesting, but you don't really feel it when you just see it every day.
Actually, we pass this sidewalk every day, but until we realize, this
mobility issue.
Yeah. We can see something else.
Yeah. So for this one, we redesigned his van. We make the new opening for the doors, so it can lift it like this, with the sun shades like of the storefront. It actually creates an arcade. So here the sidewalk become part of the store, become something really private, only used by him.
I think for this type of design, it's really not about to solve the practical problem. No one will open car doors in this way. That's really inconvenient and unpractical. But only in this way, you can make this scene a little bit absurd, and also you can see the real relationship between the car, the van, and the shop, and the space in between even become some shape like an arcade. So I think this type of design is really about to, representational design rather than problem-solving design.
Yeah, it's to push a point to extreme, so people will notice it. And then second example we want to show you is, this is a prototype of the design. It's a very cute car. For this kind of car in China that you don't need a license, you don't need a car plate. Usually it's very popular among old people because they can drive everywhere, especially for picking up their grandchildren at school. And another activity many old people will do is like they will find recycled materials from the garbage. And some of them, they do so because they have limited income, they want to have some extra money, or some people, they just maybe they want to do something to kill time. So we think that if there's any way to combine these two things together, so we turn this car into a multifunctional vehicle. On the top, we add a basket, so all the bottles can go there. And in the back is a box that all the cardboard can go there. And here we write in Chinese, it means picking up children. So these two letters actually means, you can see it as a license, because when the police see that, okay, this car is only for picking up a child, they won't question. So you can drive it anywhere. And on the other side of the car, we added the letters, so it will help the owner to go put the bottles, and also the children can play with it. So for us, this scene is a little bit a combination of bitter-sweet emotion, because on one hand, we do feel sorry for some people, they have to make a living in this way. Life is really hard, but we believe that when they have the time to spend with their grandchildren, it must be very sweet. It's a sweet moment of the day.
And to us, maybe this car is a kind of metaphor of life. Life is, most of the time is difficult and hard, but there are always some sweet moments to enjoy.
Yeah. And then after we did the design, one day we see on the street, actually there's a simpler version of our design. That's a lady really used that car to carry the recycled materials. And then the last example from this series we want to share with you is really our ultimate response to this movable and unmovable subject. We often find this kind of car covered in camouflage patterns in our neighborhood. And they stay there forever. And after a while, you really wonder, is there really a car underneath? So we decided to make a car-shaped house that it has the shape of the car. And it is the same size, it will be put on the parking lot. But it's not supposed to be moved at all.
Yeah. If you close the door and the window, then people will think, well, there's a car underneath.
Yeah.
But actually, there's no car.
Yeah. So inside we put a mahjong table and sofa and even air conditioner, fireplace. So we think that people can come here, enjoy a happy hour, and like a mini community center. And here we want you to pay attention to the two boards. So what are they? They are the things that because the dogs, they like to pee on wheels. And it's really bad for your tire. So many owners, they will just randomly put any recycled board for protection. So to us, those boards are a symbol of wheels, a symbol of movable. So we don't have wheels because it's not supposed to be moved. But we have the boards, so pretend that we have wheels. So yeah, this is our the ultimate design for this series. And because it's called City of the Nesting Machine, so when we consider the entire installation, we want to use other domestic machines, the home appliance, as part of the like the architecture, the buildings in the city. And this is the exhibition view from the Shenzhen Biennale this year. We presented this project. And as a conclusion for this, the whole series, like we have a bunch of other models in the series. What we try to do first is to talk about this paradox between mobile and unmovable, or you don't want to move, or yes. So because we look at those domestic machine as a way by those individuals, they want to show their resistance to this.
We try to imagine, you know, a city from the view of, you know, these
individuals who use
this owner of these vehicles. So
yeah.
for them, maybe the city, the very expensive, how to survive in this very expensive city,
yeah.
and that's their weapon, their tools
yeah.
to, you know,
to fight against this system.
Yeah.
And secondly, what we try to discuss in this project is like, so what's the role of design? Like the design doesn't have to be like solving any practical issues. Yep. We don't provide any solution. But here what we did is try to make the point more extreme, and people will become more aware of this.
Yeah, I would say there's another type of design, you know, the conventional design solve problem, and I would say there are also some other types of design which maybe even raise more problems, but actually it make the thing ridiculous, but you can see some issue behind the surface.
More clearly, yeah. And evolved from this project, we had another one. It's called Restaurant Inside the Wall. This is one of the models from this collection. It's a hot pot mobile food store, but we designed it into this conveyor belt style, like the Japanese sushi bar. Yeah. Like here, it's supposed to be rotating all the time.
And the interesting part, I think, is not only the car itself, but it's about how this car, you know, related with the environment.
Yeah. We want to develop this model into another art form, graphic novel. Here are the basic materials we have for this story. This is it's just next to our neighborhood. That there's a river, but it's just a riverbed in most of the time with a drainage hose. There's no water, no river when there's no rain. And this is the parking lot next to the river. And here there's a fence to separating the parking lot and the apartment buildings. Yeah. And this is a view that's at midnight of Beijing, that's also close to the river, that you will see a lot of food stores coming out and provide food for people who come home late. And this used to be there used to be a restaurant on that parking lot. Here, the title is with a riverside restaurant.
Yeah, we think the title is pretty inspiring. It's very direct because this restaurant just next to the river, but also actually give us, you know, a story based on this name.
Yeah. And then the restaurant actually was gone after a while, but they didn't take down the building. They just filled the opening. But somehow they leave this shutter door here, which makes this thing even more absurd. So this is all we have, and we try to build a narrative based on everything here. The story started from a peaceful moment from this metro station close to the river. It's almost 7 p.m. at night.
I think the beginning image really want to set up a kind of atmosphere. I think atmosphere is more important than story in our, you know, comics. Mm-hmm. So it's set up kind of depressed feeling in
Cold,
big city,
yeah.
and people are kind of indifferent to each other, like, you know, what the relationship in big cities. Yeah.
And here you see people will go across the riverbed. At this moment, there's no river and there's no restaurant. Then after they come across the riverbed, they will keep walking along the parking lot, along the fence, and they stop here in front of a Mercedes. And behind this fancy car, this is the shuttle door we have. So just they stop here.
It kind of raises the question
Why they stop here?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this is our protagonist, the owner of this hot pot food store. So she also arrived, and he also stopped at this door and in front of his car. And a dog showed up and backed to the car, and the car just automatically opened, and he got in and go. So this is just to make fun of this driverless technology. Even a dog can own a fancy car, probably. And so after the dog left, the owner took the spot. So he put his store here and started to open the business. So here we see a lot of delicious food. And here we want to mention that we use the same way to draw architecture to do everything.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting part because AutoCAD is really designed for drawing architecture, but when you use these tools to draw food or something else, people, then it's kind of difficult because you are limited by all these tools. But once you get these things done, then you're kind of getting another special style, which is really
we really want to reduce the feeling of hand drawing or everything has to be in a one unified style.
This kind of rigidness and the geometric feeling is really great beauty for us as in architecture drawing.
Also for the composition, we try to keep the style like elevation, a section, and a floor plan to try to be more architectural. And so here people are enjoying their food on this belt, the rotating table.
Actually for us, the comic or graphic novel is not mainly not, maybe it's, sometimes we forget storytelling, we focus on the drawing, but the drawing itself is interesting. So for us, we think it's a special format of drawing sometimes,
Then the rain comes, and slowly the river shows up, and so the owner has to find something to cover his cart. And here he opened up this shutter door. So behind the door, inside this wall, we saw this retractable canopy. So he put it out, covered the whole cart, make a space. Everything is already protected from the rain. And then he lit up this signage. It reads Riverside Restaurant.
So here the restaurant finally come into being.
Yeah. So this is the climax of the whole story, that we have the river and we have the Riverside Restaurant during this thunderstorm. So this is really saying that, okay, you only get the restaurant in this particular moment. Then the next day, and end of the story, the rain is gone and everything goes back to normal, and the dog is back with his fancy car, and people just go back to work.
Yeah, for us actually, graphic novel is different from drawing because drawing actually, to show everything simultaneously. Although it can tell story, but it's not that clear. But comics really have a strong ability to play with the time scope and with the sequence. So you can see, although I think the elements we use are really normal, ordinary elements, but by playing with the sequence, you still can, get this, upside down in the story.
Yeah, there's no really dramatic plots. Everything is based, all the narrative is based on the transition of the space. So at the end of last year, we got invited by the exhibition of Beijing Biennale, and so they say we can do an installation for the exhibition. We really want to make that car into reality, but the budget was really tight and we couldn't do that. So we think that why not just make the scene, like we leave the car out of the site, but just create the whole environment on the site. So all the details, like all the elements will be extracted from the whole story.
That actually it looks more ridiculous because just
or mysterious.
Empty car part and with a single wall and a shutter door on it.
And but we still want to show the graphic novel to tell the story. So we get idea from this newspaper window. You find a lot of this in our neighborhood. It's very old-fashioned. But still today, every day, someone will come to change the newspaper, so for people to read. So we think this is a good form for our graphic novel. So this is the exhibition view in the end. We have the wall, we have the shuttle door, and inside the shuttle door we have the the image pasted on the wall. The solid red for the canopy means it exists, and everything else is in line. We try to indicate that they are not there all the time. So this is the parking spot. And on the back, we have this newspaper window. We put the story.
All these equipment are buying directly from the Taobao.
Taobao, and they are just from very cheap materials and very simple construction. So this is the front and this is the back.
Yeah, and the front actually give people a lot of questions,
yeah.
And you got answer in the back.
Yeah. So we are very happy with this installation because we think this is the first time we try something really multi-layered to create a narrative and make an installation at the same time.
Yeah.
The last project we want to talk about is called the Grand Stage. It's probably one of the largest projects we have done so far, closest to architectural scale. This project is also for exhibition. It's called Art Field Nanhai Guangdong. Art Field is a kind of exhibition that usually takes place in outdoors and mostly in countryside. There are a lot in the world, and probably one most famous one is the one in Japan. So usually this kind of event, they really make emphasis on creating local connection between the artwork and the site. And also the organizers usually they hope to use this event to create attraction from bring tourists or bring investment to the local area. So for the site, we have two options. The first one is in a very beautiful village in the city of Foshan, and the organizer gave us this old house. They said we can do anything with it, but the moment when we saw that, we think it seems perfect enough. Like it's really beautiful already in this location. And the second option we have is this huge, ugly parking building inside a beautiful natural landscape. And so to us, both the village, the old house, and this parking building, they are ordinary views. They are from everyday life. But the difference is that for the village, you see everything in harmony. You don't want to change anything. You think you will just destroy it. But for this one, we see a lot of tension in this image that is so beautiful naturally, but they have this something really from nowhere, out of proportion. So we think that we want to take this, we want to push this feeling of being absurd to another level. So talking about making local connections, naturally for us first to check what they have in the local architecture. So in the traditional Cantonese architecture, they are famous for this kind of very dramatic, very beautiful decorations on buildings. And many subjects, they use a clay structure. And many of the subjects are about buildings as well. So they literally draw buildings on buildings. So this is pretty much the same thing we like to do all the time. And we think that we can put some architecture onto this facade. But what kind of architecture? So we look into another tradition in the local area. It's called Cantonese opera. Even today, you can find a lot of this kind of outdoor stages in parks or on the streets in South China. And many old people, they actually go to see the show every day. It becomes an everyday activity. Traditionally, theater is not really expensive architecture. It's very temporary. And even today in Hong Kong, they still keep the tradition that for New Year's or for the special events, they will build this kind of bamboo structure for maybe 2 weeks, and the people will come in to enjoy the opera, and then they take down the building and recycle everything for next event. So, and the Cantonese opera also is quite popular in other places like Southeast Asia. So, for example, even in Malaysia, you will see this kind of very beautiful, very heavily decorated temporary stage on the street. But compared to this Cantonese style that we found one picture is from northern China, a village. This is apparently the company didn't have a lot of money, so they only use several pieces of fabric to put up this stage. Somehow it looks very contemporary art, very minimal, and also gives the important idea to us that we can use fabric for our own covering of the facade. So this is the first sketch that we have for this facade, and we want to make a stage and use fabric and put some image of probably the local architecture on top. And talking about fabric installation, there are lots in the world. The most famous ones must be Crystal and Round Cloud. And what's the fascinating part of their work to us is the pleats that you see in those wrappings. And there's another school, different style, that, for example, for artist Amanda Browder, she usually turns this kind of artwork into a community event. She will call for donation of the recycled fabrics and call for volunteers from the community to sew them together, and in the end, wraps the building. We like both approach, but we, of course, want to add our own signature. And we want to find a way to keep the pleats, but also have this sewing effect. And then we also look at the mesh covering and the scaffolding. This is so familiar to architects. And we found that actually this is a good material that we can both get the pleats, and you can actually get the patterns if you use a different color, different fabrics.
And also, it's really the basic building techniques, and we prefer the low-tech in this type of project.
Yeah. So, and talking about the stage design, we are reminded of the work by Italian architect Leo. He is famous for his drawings, the designs for the comic scenes and the tragic scenes. And for comic scenes, he mentioned that the element must be the everyday space, the private homes, the balconies, the windows, the flags. So to him, probably the comic means every day, like everyday life. And we really love this idea, and we decided to replace these elements with the everyday space in the city of Foshan. And also important that for his design, he used a perspective because he wants to achieve this depth for the space on the stage. But we decided to replace it with axonometric.
Yeah. Axonometric for us is a kind of, we have some faith in axonometric drawing, but also in terms of, construction, I think it's simple because it's parallel lines, and the material we use is fabric, and they always have sort of equal width for each.
So this is the final design we have for the stage. But we got a challenge that no factory want to take the order. They think that everything looks so complicated. They don't know where to start. So we realized we have to find a way to simplify the process and help people to understand how to make it. And we came up with the idea to using the concept of layers that we are so familiar with in computer drawing. We think in the material world, you can also use layers to use simple elements, but create something very complex. So we designed this system that we asked the construction team to first make this regular grid for the first layer of scaffoldings. And so on top of it, you can just put down the fabric vertically, just very easily. Very simple. And the second layer of the scaffolding, we use this 45-degree angle. And so all the diagonal fabrics can be put on top of that. So here we finally got our axonometric projection, very similar to the drawing we have. And the last layer is the steps in the front. So in this way, we were able to break down the whole image into some very simple patterns. We select these colors and then make into different shapes with dimensions. Every piece is very simple. So soon that our order was accepted by a factory. This is how they sewed them together in the workshop. And this is the installation site. To us, the installation process itself is a performance. Everything looks so beautiful when the workers, they walk in between the fabrics, in between the scaffoldings. And this is a final piece. So we were able to put the vernacular buildings, the image of the local housings into this stage. And we deliberately left these sticks of the scaffolding just like this, and pointing out with different lengths. To us, they almost look like the stitches of the fabric. Yeah, and so this is a view from the inside. If you look at the fabric from the inside of the building, everything becomes very abstract, but very beautiful with the light. So to us, this project gives us an idea that when we talk about transforming the everyday life into architectural practice, usually we will probably assume that you should keep that feeling of every day. Yeah. Everything should look very normal or nothing dramatic. Yeah, But actually, you can also make something really dramatic out of the everyday. And the fun part is that the dramatic, this drama lies in the everyday already. Like the first time we saw this site, we see that this very dramatic because you have this building from nowhere. But what we did is just to push that drama into another level to make it even more absurd. And also from another angle, that imagine people will drive their car into this building, they will feel that they drive into a stage, they drive into a drama. So this is probably another level that we will bring something dramatic to the everyday activity because of this design.
So that's all what we want to share today, and a short conclusion. Actually, there's no conclusion. I just share, some some works, because the big issue here is really about how to transform, daily resources into architecture practice. Because there are so many resources for architect to push the profession forward, like high technology, like AI technology. But there's another very important resource we think is real life, around us. And I guess there's discussion, a lot of discussion about daily life, ordinary views in architecture discipline now. I think in Europe, maybe young, new generation architects try to make this sort of trashy style to, breaking apart from, this perfect architect to get this daily feeling into design building. And in United States, there's a long tradition, postmodernism, and pop art. They all get a lot of energy from everyday life. And also in East Asia, Japan, Korean, and also China, more and more architects discuss about this issue. And we think maybe the scope of architecture actually expand a lot with these daily life elements come in. Before that, maybe only landmark building counted as architecture, and then vernacular building, domestic house counted as architecture. And now even the normal poor bad building in the city also counted in architecture, and we can find the resources in this scope. I think this is really a big scope and a lot of potential to explore. So I think is for us, we hope we can continue to kind of do our exploration in this scope, and I also think it's an open scope for everyone in architecture field. Okay. Yep. That's it.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the wonderful lecture and a lot of projects I haven't seen yet. And those projects are all very new, only produced in the past 2 years. They have many other amazing work. Also, we're looking forward to the wonderful work by the end of the semester. So thank you for coming. So we're not finished yet, so let's move downstairs and in the atrium and for the reception and with some food and beverage and also a little discussion.